think the victory is the journey of actually like stepping into all of who you are and not talking yourself out of your own truth. And what I mean by that is this journey of that we're talking about, right? Of course, optimism, of course, resiliency to get back up every time you're knocked down, of course, all those things. But I think that so many people listening right now, if they don't ever learn to get still and hear their own truth and hear their own intuition, I think what's going to happen, and this is what happens to most people, is they end up staying in their comfort zone. They end up putting their own immediate failures on a pedestal or other people's opinions or self-doubt. They end up talking themselves out of their own truth. And then they end up never actually becoming the person they're born to be. So for me, I don't think like the fact that I was able to build $1 billion company is the victory. I think the moments of me knowing this is what I'm supposed to do and trusting it, even when it doesn't make sense. And I'll give you one example, okay, of this. So, and maybe this will make sense, because optimism, of course, is important, and I know what you're saying. But I think the biggest thing is learning how to hear yourself and trust yourself. I really believe that.
Do you believe that your optimism allows this all to work? Because if you are looking at losses as in, well, this was meant to be part of my journey and this scar is actually attractive, because that's how I think about it. I think about all those losses as scars and like that scar giving you character, and that's attractive. Do you believe that optimism was an incredibly big factor and ingredient in your success?
I think optimism is great. I think though that knowing why we're doing what we're doing, listening to our gut and going after our calling, like literally living our calling, I think that's the victory.
Hold on though.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. Every human needs levels of affirmation along the way to sustain that. Right? Yeah. And so in the beginning where you're not seeing those results, for many, and you might have, I've always seen results pretty quickly in my good calls. So I always try to think about someone who's not seeing it. So because they don't have optimism, they have delusion and they think they're going to be, Beyonce when they can't sing, right? Do you feel like believing in your calling gets affirmed along the way? What do you rely on in that beginning? Don't you think blind faith is actually completely grounded in optimism?
I mean, for me, my faith is a huge part of my life.
I'm going to take religion as faith out. I'm saying I'm just thinking about you, young you in this moment, and I'm really fascinated by it. I'm meant to do this because what you're talking about is what I love, which is the journey.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into your. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I don't think the victory is the outcome, right? I don't think the victory, listen, I know how accomplished you are and everything. I know you're gonna have the New York Jets one day. I know all that. But I don't think that's the victory. I think the victory is the journey of actually like stepping into all of who you are and not talking yourself out of your own truth. And what I mean by that is this journey of that we're talking about, right? Of course, optimism, of course, resiliency to get back up every time you're knocked down, of course, all those things. But I think that so many people listening right now, if they don't ever learn to get still and hear their own truth and hear their own intuition, I think what's going to happen, and this is what happens to most people, is they end up staying in their comfort zone. They end up putting their own immediate failures on a pedestal or other people's opinions or self-doubt. They end up talking themselves out of their own truth. And then they end up never actually becoming the person they're born to be. So for me, I don't think like the fact that I was able to build $1 billion company is the victory. I think the moments of me knowing this is what I'm supposed to do and trusting it, even when it doesn't make sense. And I'll give you one example, okay, of this. So, and maybe this will make sense, because optimism, of course, is important, and I know what you're saying. But I think the biggest thing is learning how to hear yourself and trust yourself. I really believe that. There was a moment.
How do you define that as a term? Because I view that as self-belief and confidence and optimism. I think that you're such a, very quickly I'm like, oh, this is my sister. Like literally within the first 3 seconds, I'm like, oh, I see. So I'm trying to do, and I apologize because I'm hoping a different voice might do this for the listener. I'm trying to figure out what words you use to quantify. I fully agree with you, everything you're saying. I'm wondering if you view optimism as So I think optimism, similar to what we were talking about earlier, sometimes gets pegged as delusion.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
I've been
I
thinking
got
about,
you.
you see where I'm going? Because I could almost
Yep.
feel you doing that right now. And I'm like, I get you,
Yep.
sister. Because like this is why I, like, it's so great. Wordsmithing matters, right? Like, for example, hustle has gotten demonized as like burnout. So I no longer use it because I don't need it. You know what I'm going to call it? Work ethic. Call it what you want. Here's what I can tell you. For all the belief you had and all the love you had in doing what you were doing, I'm pretty confident based on your outcome that there was a lot of work ethic there. And so whatever you want to call it, and sometimes I just think about, I know the word hustle triggers people, so I use the word work ethic now because I don't want to ever not let anybody who cares to listen to me not realize that if you don't put in the work, it is impossible. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I just had a big aha moment that what you're saying is optimism. I a billion% agree with. And I'm thinking of that right now as belief.
Right.
Same
I
thing.
love that.
Yep. And now I'm right there with you. Like, here's the thing and then I want to share one quick story with you too, that I hopefully someone listening right now maybe needs to hear. But I mean, when I look back, it's like when people are like, oh, how did you start with close to nothing and build $1 billion company? It's like, yeah, I got back up every time I got knocked down, and I followed my gut and I worked really, really hard. But I do think that one of the most important things I did was just like how to build $1 billion company from nothing. Like, I think one of the most important things is making that decision to believe that you can.
Yes.
And for me, that's optimism, exactly what you're saying. And I guess I call it belief. So yeah, 1,000,000% with that. And one more thing, just on maybe people listening to us right now that are like, oh, Gary, like Jamie, I trust my gut sometimes and it's wrong, or I tried it once and it didn't work, or I don't know how to hear my own intuition. I just want to say, I think that it is a muscle that we can all build. And I think people have to give themselves grace, right? It reminds me of like when you start to meditate, a lot of people try it and they can't do it. They're like, they go through their to-do list in their head the whole time they're trying to meditate, but you have to like give yourself grace and start. And what I would say, whether it's entrepreneurs or someone who's 14 years old and out there dating right now, I would say when you start to look back at your experiences and think about moments when you had a gut feeling and you didn't follow it. Like, we've all dated like a sketchy guy or or had a, and like, you're like, his phone didn't really just like shut off for 3 days, or he didn't lose the phone. He went like, and then you kind of make that decision of like, okay.
Talk to me about, I mean, we are really vibing here. I actually want to talk to you offline because I just have had the thought. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm so excited.
Right.
Insecurity.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're like, to me, like thinking to my girlfriends, friends that were girls that were dating guys, that I knew what the guys were doing, which was they were preying on my friends' insecurities, and sometimes brilliant, beautiful girls. And I'm like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
This woman, you really triggered something in me. This woman, I'm thinking about 4 or 5 friends through the last 20 years. This woman is subjectively, and if we had 100 people ask, is a million miles better than this man. This man has figured out the cheat code that if he makes her feel insecure, he has the leverage. Thoughts?
Yep. I think that happens every single day. And I think that we look for people that treat us how we believe we deserve to be treated. Like we find partners that meet it.
So you go with, cool, before you worry about jerk off Johnny, this is a big game of your own lack of self-love towards you.
It's your own lack of self-love, because here's the thing, and I don't know your friends, so I'll just say this. I'll make a general statement.
You'll appreciate this. This was mainly 17 to 25 years old, because you see that so commonly there. I mean, in later stages, people are in really deep relationships and you're in different parts of your life. When you're going through high school and college, you're spending so much time with people, you get better reads to the cleanness of the data is like, oh, this is really fucked up. When you're older, you're running in different circles, you don't really get to see it as easily.
Right. And I think that whether, no matter your age, this is what I believe. I think that when someone's treating us like crap and we stay with them, I think it's because we deep down inside don't believe we deserve better yet. And here's the thing, for people like that are dating your friend who's totally screwing them over, right? if you were to bring the best, most amazing, beautifully like kind person into their space, that same girl would probably put them in the friend zone.
I couldn't
Because
agree more.
because they don't yet
I couldn't
deep
agree
down
more. Yeah,
inside
I get
believe,
it.
yeah, that
It's what
they deserve
it's what
more.
and also people value different things through their life.
Mm,
You know, one of the
yeah.
things, you know, right now we live through a generation desperately interested in blaming social media for lack of accountability. They're just pointing fingers, right? Like if you are in a good place with yourself and your perspective is strong around gratitude, an anonymous person's negative comment is not going to ruin your day.
Yeah. And I think when it does, I think that's what's so tough, right? That's when it's a reminder to ourselves, like, oh yeah, we have some more work to do. One of the things I talk about in my book, Believe It, is just that ability to learn to turn down the volume on certain things and turn up the volume on other things. Like one example, we were 3 years into building the company, right? I was hearing no from everyone, Gary, like from all the retailers I dreamed of carrying our products that I used to shop in, right? I would save my tip money, like I mentioned, as a Denny's waitress and buy products in the department stores or in Sephora.
What year was this?
So we launched 2007. Like I quit my job 2007. I wrote the business plan on my honeymoon flight to South Africa with my husband. Not the most romantic way to kick off a marriage. And we both got back, quit our jobs, dove all in. I thought, Gary, and maybe so many entrepreneurs listening, I thought, oh, if I just pour everything I have and actually create a product that works, like it's just going to sell. If it's that good, it's just going to sell. And then I didn't realize it would be the hard. I mean, I've had a lot of jobs in my life, but being an entrepreneur is by far.
Well, you especially also built that brand different than building a brand today where you can use Shopify and social media to build it. You had to get a yes from Sephora, Ulta, you know, Walmart, Walgreens, and you know, Macy, whoever it was. And that is difficult when you're innovating the way you did. Do you know that my whole life is no? Do you know VaynerMedia? A lot of people listening don't know this. Most brands don't want to say yes to VaynerMedia. We don't want to do a commercial and then go to sleep. Like we don't want to take 12 weeks to do the perfect commercial and then do print ads that look like it or banner ads or digital programmatic. My whole life building VaynerMedia is no. Everything I do is Gary Vee's easy. I just do it with the audience. But VaynerMedia is exactly, I know what you're living through because when you innovate and you're doing something different and you don't look the part, you didn't work at Procter & Gamble for 13 years.
Yeah.
Or like, what's this Washington State thing? Like, you know what it is.
Well, and it's wild because I would go in and start, I would pitch the product. And, we were staying alive on social media. So we were getting, people were writing just blogs at that point, and we were selling like 1 to 3 orders a day on our website, and people were spreading the word. That was the only way we barely stayed alive. But all the retailers, exactly what you said. And by the way, I've learned this, like when you're doing something that's authentic or that is different, but even if it's just authentic to you, even in a crowded industry, by definition, it's novel. By definition, it's never been done before. And I really believe, looking back now at this journey and everything, I believe that like even a lot of visionaries, touted visionaries, I think they can't imagine anything being successful unless subconsciously they have proof in the back that they've already seen it and it's already worked. So it's like, of course, so many people are going to say no to your dream or doubt your dream if they've never seen it done before. And we had 3 years of every single beauty retailer saying, no, you're not the right fit. It's not going to work. You're not right for our customers. And and by the way, we talk about gut feeling. I kept having this gut feeling we're supposed to go on QVC because then I could actually like show my bright red rosacea and prove live that our product works, unlike the photoshopped ads on TV. And this is just something to share for someone who might need to hear this right now, who's having a gut feeling, but they feel like they're wrong. Like I kept having this feeling. And every time I would do a meeting with QVC, it would be a no. Every phone call I'd finally get, like I got their head guy, Alan Burke, on the phone. He's like a legend. He's responsible for building this $1 billion beauty empire on QVC. And I finally got him on a call, and I thought for sure it was going to be a yes. And because if he's taking his precious time, and it was about a minute into the call, and he said, I just need to let you know, we've reviewed your product with all the buyers. It's unanimous. It's a no. You're not the right fit for QVC. And of course, I like poured my heart out. I'm like, oh, but I am the right fit. And then we were down to under $1,000 in our bank account at that point. So I remember like crying myself to sleep. And long story short, a year later, when I finally did get a yes to go on QVC, I took this big risk that I was advised not to by consultants, and I put real women of all shapes and sizes and skin tones and skin challenges, and I showed my own bare face and all the things that had
Yes.
never been done
Yes.
before. We sold out at the 10-minute mark. I was crying on national television because it's live. QVC is live to 100
Yep.
million homes.
You
And that,
knew the truth, and your heart
yeah,
would win, not, students telling you what to do.
yeah, and listen, it was a big risk, but I feel like I know this lesson that like I know this, and now I've seen it play out with thousands of entrepreneurs over the years. But I know that authenticity alone doesn't guarantee success, but inauthenticity
Oh,
guarantees
I love that.
failure,
Love that.
right?
Love that. Listen,
Always.
I mean, you are preaching.
I just love the story about QVC, your first time going on QVC. And
Yeah.
because this is the ultimate story of following your heart and following your gut, and doing and staying true to yourself. I feel like that's thrown around all the time. Stay true to yourself. Every time I ask someone, what's your best advice? Stay true to yourself. But this exemplifies, this is textbook, stay true to yourself. I would love for you to share that story.
Yeah, I think that we all kind of know or believe these things like, oh, I need to be true to myself, right? But then when it comes to real life and how we show up and how we decide what to do when everything's on the line, that's when it gets really tough to not just like know our values or know what we believe in, but then to actually live them. And I talk a lot in the book about how while authenticity alone doesn't automatically guarantee success, inauthenticity guarantees failure. And I saw that now play out over a decade in the tens of thousands of entrepreneurs I've had the blessing of meeting, and very few ever make it. I think it's how Oprah has made it. Nobody was ever like her or is ever like her. And to reveal all the parts that normally people would hide, that's how we create connection. That's our superpower. And I after 3 years of hearing no from everyone. I mean, I Angie, and every ounce of my being, I kept feeling in my gut like, okay, I created this great product with It Cosmetics. It works for me, and I have hereditary rosacea. Nothing else would work, and I just kept feeling in my gut like I need to not just launch this product, but also show on real women, every age, size, skin challenge, skin tone, like show real people using this and show how it works. And I kept having this vision. When I launched the company, it was even before YouTube was doing this. So no one was doing this. All we saw was these ads on television in commercials where it was usually somebody with the same skin tone. They always were like the same age and flawless skin. And you never saw anybody with, that looked like you and like me. You know what I mean? You just never did. And so I had this vision, oh my gosh, if I can create a product that works and like try to shift culture however I possibly can in the beauty industry of how they define beauty. Like that was my deep mission, right? For every, because growing up when I'd see those ads, I always loved them. I always aspired to look like that, but deep down inside, right, they always made me feel not enough in this weird way. So I was like, oh my gosh, if I can create a company whose mission is so much bigger than me, and I could try to shift culture in the beauty industry and how they define beauty, and change those images for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself, and every adult who still does. And so this big vision. And then all of a sudden, for 3 years, everyone's telling me it's not going to work. Everyone's saying no. And when a retailer says no to you, what they're saying is, I don't think that we can make money from you. Is what they're saying. We don't believe in what you're doing, or that it will sell, or that it will work. And so 3 years of that goes on, including years of hearing no from QVC. And it's a crazy wild story I share in the book of how we eventually got a yes to get one shot on QVC. Now QVC is a live television channel broadcast to 100 million homes, and when you go live, you have this big sales goal each minute that you're live. And if you're not hitting your sales goal, they pull you off, right? And anyhow, after years of rejection, I got one shot, one yes, big yes, to get one chance live on QVC to sell our concealer. And we were only selling 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, barely in business. And I learned, Angie, that I would need to hit their sales goal in the 10-minute window. I would need to sell over 6,000 units of our concealer. And I also learned the deal was going to be consignment, meaning I had to figure out how to make all the product, pay for it, ship it in, and then get my one big shot on air for 10 minutes. And if it didn't sell, it would all come back to me, which means we'd be out of business. So it was a big risk, and we applied for an SBA loan just because we had no money. We had literally no money left. We were down to well under $1,000. So we got 22 banks said no, and the 23rd bank said yes, just to fund the inventory for that one order for QVC for that one chance in 10 minutes. So basically, everything was on the line. I flew out to QVC a week before the airing, and I sat in their parking lot in this rental car all alone, and I just like stared at the front of the building, knowing the next time I walked in there, my whole life was going to change, or I would be bankrupt. And here's where the struggle came: is we hired third-party consultants who are amazing. They help a lot of people succeed on selling in television or selling their products in stores. And they all told me the same thing. They said, if you want a chance at succeeding, here's what you need to do. You need to go on the air in your 10 minutes, use this type of model. And all the models look like they're 12, and they were all the same skin tone with flawless skin. And I'm like, listen, like, what if I just take my makeup off and show my bright red rosacea and show the world how this product works? And what if I put real women of every age and shape and size and skin tone and skin challenge? And I would argue and I say, because if I'm sitting at home watching, how do I know something's going to work for me if I don't see it on someone who looks like me? Like, to me, it was so common sense, and they were mortified. And they here's the thing: they wanted me to win, and they were giving me the best advice they knew how on what they said is the only way people will buy a product from something from they would say these unattainable images of aspiration that no one could possibly look like, but that is what sells product. And I'm like, so it's tough. So I sat in that rental car knowing that everything was on the line, knowing I had one shot. And it's, my gut was telling me one thing, right? And experts were telling me another. And these are the moments that define our lives, is when we learn to hear ourselves, hear our gut, and then make the decision to trust it. And it's not always easy, right? And I sat in that rental car every day for a week, and I just, I prayed, I cried, but I also imagined who that woman was watching on the other end. And I don't know why, but I kept imagining a single mom in Nebraska folding laundry who was like too busy to remember that she mattered and that she's beautiful. And I just kept imagining, like, if she was going to turn on her television for a few seconds, and I was going to be blessed with a few seconds of her time, like, it came down to this moment where I realized I'd rather have her see me showing women who look like her, calling them beautiful and meaning it, even if she buys nothing. I'd rather do that than sell a ton of product and stand for nothing. And so I knew what I had to do, but it didn't mean it was easy. And I remember walking into the QVC studios, and for that one shot, that 10 minutes. And when we went live, so I remember standing there in the studio, and there's this giant countdown clock on the floor that started at the 10-minute mark. I was sweating so much, and I'm not nervous for television, but it was that everything was on the line, and I was shaking. I remember like hoping my Spanx caught all my sweat, because I was like, I can't be sweating through a dress on national television. I was freaking out. But I remember the clock started, and I remember the moment my bare face before shot came up on national television, and I walked over to all the models that I chose as real women, all ages, all shapes, all sizes, all skin tones, all skin challenges. And I remember there was about a minute left in the presentation, and the host says, the tan shade's almost gone, the deep shade's almost sold out. And I was like, and then I remember at the 10-minute mark, the huge sold out sign came up across the screen. I start crying on national television. I remember they cut, and then they went to like the next item, which is like Dyson vacuum or Vitamix or Apple iPhone or something. And my husband comes rushing through the double doors of the studio, and I'm like, real women have spoken. And I'm like crying, and he's like, we're not going bankrupt. And this is
such
like
a guy.
such a guy. But that one airing, Andy, turns into 5 that year, 101 the next year. Anyways, for 8 years straight, I did 250 live shows a year on QVC, and we built the largest beauty brand in QVC's history. It is right now at this very moment. But I only share that because it was 3 years of them saying no. And
Yeah.
so, like, no one, whoever's listening and needs to hear this today, no one can tell you how big your dream can be. No one can tell you you're not enough. And when people reject you and they literally look you in the eye and tell you they don't think you're going to make it, or you're not the right fit, or you're not this enough or that enough, like, those are the moments we don't quit, we don't give up. Maybe we cry a little bit,
Yeah.
but those are the moments where we listen to our gut and we stay authentic and we keep going. And people who do that are the ones who are able to build something that lasts, or that matters, or that really, makes a contribution to the world. And I believe every one of us has that inside of us, right? And our life comes down to if we listen to our calling or if we listen to our opposition.
Our topic is on focus and discipline. Yesterday, I talked about how, we have to realign our weeks sometimes. Actually, I was on the Growth Day members only area yesterday talking about how aliveness and connection and meaning are what we're after.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you're lacking focus sometimes, maybe it's because what you're doing isn't the things that brings you enthusiasm, joy, purpose, mission, meaning. Maybe it's sometimes you're just tired, you're wiped out. So your focus isn't there because your physical well-being, you're just tired and exhausted. And so it's hard to stay focused and disciplined. And also I shared yesterday, Jamie, on Instagram about how, sometimes the reason we're not focused and disciplined is because every time we try to do something, we speak so negatively of ourselves that, of course, the brain doesn't look forward to trying again, because every time we try again, we apply self-hate and negative speaking to ourselves. And our brain just goes, I don't want to do that, because you're just going to feel discouraged and you're going to hate on yourself. And so learning to focus and move forward with like positive affirmation for self, which you teach me a lot about, honestly, is helping people realize, oh, when I do that, I feel good when I get momentum. Of course, I want to get momentum today. Of course, I want to take action today, because when I do that, I honor and I respect myself. I get momentum. That feels good. It gives me more competency and capabilities. Okay, that feels good. So I feel like focus is not always just like, what do you do with your blocks of time? It's how are you speaking to yourself and treating yourself, and what are you really working towards? Because if you're treating yourself and speaking to yourself well, and you have that buoyant energy mentally and emotionally, spiritually, that comes from honoring self, and you're doing things that you really care about, focus and discipline get way easier.
Yeah, that's so good. The words we say to ourselves about ourselves are like the most powerful words, right? And I think that's really big. And I think, this is a really important topic for everybody, whether you're an entrepreneur or someone starting a dream or someone just looking to grow or have a better relationship or a better family, that a lot of times, like, and when people do the self-analysis, Brendan, I think this is really powerful, because I think we all realize, oh, sometimes we're guilty of this, like that we say things to ourselves about us that we would never, ever even think about saying to another person. You know what I mean? Like, for some of us, it's easy to see our friend and go, wow, they're an amazing parent. But then to ourselves, we're like, oh, I can't, like, I made the frozen microwave dinner for the 3rd day in a row. I'm like the things we say to ourselves, right? That we would never. And also when it comes to focus, I feel like it's easier for us to focus on celebrating other people and celebrating all the things they're doing right. And then when we focus on ourselves, it's the opposite. And then we start telling ourselves in our own head, we focus and hone in on the things we're not doing enough of, or the things we're not doing right. And then those get bigger. And I think it's a really powerful thing. And even an exercise to do this week, by the way, to really just take note of and be aware of the things that you're saying to other people who you love and care about or work with or just met in the coffee shop, the things you say to other people, and then even write down 5 or 10 of the things you actually say to yourself in your own head. And even just doing that simple exercise, it's eye-opening. It's eye-opening.
Yeah, if most people heard their internal chatter, they would have so much sympathy for themselves. They'd say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I speak to myself that way. No wonder I'm not focused. I feel terrible. What's so important, I think, in this new world where everyone's so busy and distracted, we're all doing these things, is to really elevate the conversation about wellness, well-being. We learned that in the high performance research, right? It's like the highest performers, the longest term successful people across the world, in 190 countries, the top 10 to 15% of most successful people in both well-being and happiness, positive relationships, and external success, like wealth or perceived goal attainment. That well-being piece, the sense that they have positive health, mental, emotional, physical, was critical to their long-term drive and success. And so some of you've been so, like, Jamie and I keep reminding people, like, there's times in your life when you're a launch window, when you are so focused and you are so disciplined that some things get compromised. Like, I'm sure Jamie would love more sleep and more time with her family, hands down, right? And friends and people, right? We all have these launch windows. But in general, we have to make sure we are always training our mind and our body to be at ease, to be at peace, to be in a wellspring of health, because then it's so much easier to be focused and disciplined. People ask me all the time, like, how do you create this much content for this many years? I'm like, because I feel good. I had a brain injury in 2011, and I had a huge book deadline. We had passed like 4 million people on Facebook following us. We had, that was I think one of my first years earning like tens of millions of dollars. I had no idea what the hell was going on. Life was just going so fast. I felt like I was in launch windows all the time. And then I got in an accident and got post-concussive syndrome. And I felt terrible. And I snapped my wrist off. So if you ever see my wrist, I got this big piece of metal in here. I threw out my hip, dislocated shoulder, broke a bunch of ribs. And most importantly, I scrambled my eggs. I got my brain rattled pretty hard. And I had 6 months after that where I struggled so much with not just focus, not just discipline, just feeling like even showing up. Just feeling like even showing up, let alone focus for an hour, let alone be disciplined, to say no to the bad things and yes to the right things. I just feeling like showing up was so friggin' hard. And it was so awful of an experience. I said, I am going to learn to completely optimize my brain health. I'm going to learn to repair my body. That's when I got into like a ton of mobility work, a ton of flexibility work, started like training differently so that I had greater range of motion. It's when I said, you know what, I'm going to do all the things in the morning to set my brain up for success throughout the day. That's what the original version of the high performance planner was born. I did that for myself so I could organize myself and just set yourself up for success. Because I feel like the good news is if you suffered or you felt bad, you don't want that anymore. So how are you training yourself to be better? That's what high performance is all about. How are you training ourselves to be better so that it's actually easier to perform than have to like grit and bear it and like, I don't have to like fight to create joy and content in my life because I take so good care of myself that it flows, right? That I'm not blocking source. I'm not blocking my heart. I'm not blocking those things. And I think that's been a big secret to my success.
That's huge. I didn't know that's where the high performance planner originated, actually.
Because I was a hot mess. Look, it's right here today. Look, this is the high performance planner. I write my daily version on it because I have my journal version too. So I feel it's like even this morning, I'm lost without that piece. But I also just want to encourage everybody, if you've never had, I say this to high performance people all the time, if you've never had that 1 year of your life where you absolutely went for it to take care of your brain health and your physical health, if you've never had that year, give yourself the gift of that this year. You'll be most people have no idea how terrible they feel until they feel great. And then they're like, oh, I want to live here. I want to feel great. So train yourself for that. Train yourself. I think you'll all be surprised. You don't have to run marathons or do crazy superhuman biohacking ninjutsu on your, you don't have to take 1 million supplements. What we need you to do is ask, how can you take care of yourself better? Because I promise the focus and discipline gets easier.
That's so good. I see a lot of people in the comments too, talking about like one small step at a time, taking that step. And I think something you just said is huge because we're always typically so focused on goals with our career or our families or this or that. And you're kind of just saying like, when you feel so good, when you feel good and you feel the day, everything else is at a whole other level too, right? So it's like that foundational piece. And, for me, that's a big thing coming up this year, is focusing on health for a decade, building at cosmetics, building this company. But like Brendan, for the first 3 years of the business, I could never, I was in the season of rejection and setback, where it was like 3 years of everyone saying no. And then by the time we started getting momentum and by the time we started growing, I almost couldn't believe the success was happening for a while, or that I was worthy of it, or that I deserved it, or that all of that imposter syndrome kicked over. And I was just driving myself so hard to the point of burnout for a number of years. And I always felt like I had to strike while the iron's hot. And the one thing that I look back on and wish I had done differently was, I don't think you have to live in burnout or in that grind to actually have the kind of outcome that you want, right?
How do you become more focused and disciplined? And I was joking with Jamie in advance. I said, we can't just call it discipline week, because if you do, people won't watch because they feel guilty or they don't like it. But if you say come focused and disciplined, then everyone's like, oh, I'm game for that.
I know. That's the thing, is we want everything but don't want to do the work, which I'm right there. That's how I feel most days. But yeah, no, I thought I watched pieces of the Super Bowl. I thought Amanda Gorman's beautiful poem was wonderful. And I missed the halftime show. I saw a bunch of recaps of it. I missed that. And what's interesting is we talk about focus and discipline, and it is Tom Brady, whoever anyone is rooting for, his focus and discipline on not just football, but all of the areas of his life, right? Fascinating and also inspiring. And I think there's a commonality between so many people that achieve great things, or, feel joy in their relationship, or make it through the day as a parent doing homeschooling for the first time. I think there's daily habits, and there's that learning of focus and discipline, and it's a lot, but I think it really changes your life. And I think the thing I've been seeing all over online this morning is a lot of people not just talking about the Super Bowl and talking about whatever, but actually talking about Tom Brady's habits and Tom Brady's focus, and what does he do in his day-to-day life with his sleep, with his diet, all of those things, because I think people are fascinated by how do you perform at the highest level for so long, and continue that. And it's not just the football. It's not just the thing you're doing. It's kind of like everything, right? Yeah.
And here's the good news. You actually need to be disciplined in so fewer things than you think you do.
Thank you for that. Can you elaborate? Because that's good news this morning.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is good. Brendan Burchard's got some good news for you today. You have to be way less disciplined than you think you do. You only need to be disciplined at just a few moving, consistent pieces in your life. And when you get that, when you do those things, those habits or those things you want to be disciplined about, what I always call needle movers, the things that move the needle forward, that like peg out the board or make you go faster or more efficient or effective. When you get disciplined about the things that really matter, it's great, because all the guilt for all the things that you don't show up for or you're not awesome at kind of goes away, because the momentum and the progress and the fulfillment and the joy of the things that are the big things move you forward. And so I always tell people, like, here's what for all those who are like, oh my God, discipline, please don't talk about it. There's good news. There's 3 things to discipline. 1, scheduling. That's the core of discipline is you have to schedule something and choose to do it and choose to prioritize it. Discipline comes from prioritization. If you don't have the prioritization, discipline won't stick. So, okay, all we got to do, let's schedule something. Put it on the calendar. That's step 1. Step 2, show up. No matter what, just show up. You don't have to show up in a good attitude. You don't have to show up perfect. You don't have to show up with your hair did. You just have to show up. People are like, how are you and Jamie so disciplined to do a morning show? Well, we schedule it at 7:30 a.m. We try to start at 7:30 a.m. Pacific, and we just show up. Some days we know what we're going to do. Most we have no clue.
Do you know how many people in the personal growth space, people that are multiple New York Times bestsellers, big shows, all that stuff, they're like, how are you going? Wait, you and Brendan, you're going live like Monday through Friday every day? I'm like, every day. We're starting week 5 this week. They're like, you're going live, like that's like a keynote or a fireside chat or live I'm like every single day. Yeah. And we're doing it. So cheers to that. Cheers to everyone part of this with us this morning. We're all growing together. We're all getting inspired together. I love this so much. One thing I wanted, sorry to interrupt your thought, but one thing I want to just point out to everyone, just a moment of appreciation for Brendan and for how you deliver these, not just from your research, but from your, whole career of doing this. There are awesome people in the personal growth space who I love and I love watching on stage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's not the research behind it. There's not all the framework, the how-to, all the actual things, some of which aren't sexy. Like, I don't want to think about focus and discipline, right? But listen, at the end of the day, so many people maybe I get an amen on this. There's a lot of people out there that are also entertaining in the personal growth space, but then you leave and you're like, okay, how is this going to, like, what am I going to implement in my own life to actually bring more joy and bring more better relationships and more focus and help my dreams come to fruition. And the thing I have so much appreciation for your work, Brendan, is that, you're so different in that you're also really fun to watch on stage. No one dances better than you on stage. Like,
yes,
all the
thank you very much.
All the
I work very hard on my dance moves, people.
You're so funny. All the things like some of my favorite speakers, but you're able to bring these core things, the stuff that maybe isn't. No, seriously, people will agree with me because I bet you a lot of people joining us, right? Yes. See, I see April says yes. Jonathan. See, a lot of people. We've all been to a lot of stuff and it's fun and it's entertainment and it's inspiring. But then also, what are the things we can actually do in our real life that really make a difference? And I feel like you bring both. And I think that's so rare. So I'm just sitting here as your friend, just appreciating it because I'm like, oh, wait, Brendan, tell me the 3 things. I actually, you see what I'm saying as well? Because I think we're all in this together and you have such a vast background with High Performance Institute, with all the research, everything. Sorry. Okay. 3 things that we need to do. We don't need to be disciplined in everything. We don't need to be disciplined in everything. But you're saying these 3 things really move the needle.
I'll give you 3 principles for greater discipline. And then I'll tell you the actual 3 things to do to generate more discipline in such a way that your personal growth grows, that you feel like alive and connected and meaningful and joyous on this journey, because that's what really matters. I mean, discipline sucks unless in some ways the outcome is progress, greater engagement and aliveness of life, and greater success in whatever way you measure that. So the 3 principles of all of discipline comes down to, number 1, mastering your schedule. I know that sounds so boring, but it is so absolutely fundamental to your focus, to your progress, to your health, to everything. It doesn't matter if you say, okay, I only want to schedule 1 thing today. That's fine with me. I'm not trying to own every hour of your life, but that 1 thing better be awesome and it better be a needle mover. So scheduling, show up when it's scheduled. And then the 3rd thing, which is most important as a principle for all of discipline. No discipline happens unless on a real consistent basis, unless you have social connection. All of the research shows the most productive people, the most focused people, the people who are most fulfilled in doing meaningful work have attached a meaning that their focus, intention, their hard work is attached to social connection, meaning I'm going to show up for this because it's going to make me a better mom or parent. I'm going to get healthy so I have more energy for the kids. I am going to do this project so my team and company grows, so we serve more people and we make an impact. It's like the hard work must be attached to impact, but the impact isn't just self, like, oh, I'll get this. It has to have a social connection. Like you have to have a reason to show up over and over and over for others. It's why we always teach in high performance. You have to have a little card that says, who needs me on my A game today? Like, I am disciplined because I wouldn't be less disciplined doing a morning show. I'm more disciplined doing a morning show because Jamie's there. She's waiting on the other end. If I don't get there, I feel like a chump. So that's important, you know? Okay, so before I tell you 3 things I think you should be disciplined at, what are 3 things you think people should get disciplined at in their life to enjoy life better, or to have more success, or, you know, happiness in that?
Yeah, no, I think that's so powerful. And I always talk about, you know, the idea of doing something bigger than yourself, right? Attaching a meaning to it that's bigger than yourself a lot, right? And I think hearing how you put it is having that social element to it, or that social component. And I think one thing just to call out on that is sometimes people don't know, well, how do I, you know, they haven't attached that that point of identifying how is what they're doing impacting on a social level. And so just to give an example of that, just to kind of break it down, I think that it can be a result of a result. And what I mean by that, this morning, because I have book press all day today. So I'm like, I'm not missing my morning walk, right? I walk for an hour every single morning. And so today I did it at 4 a.m. I did not want to get up at 4 a.m. I didn't want to be outside freezing at 4 a.m. What I know, and that could be the thing I'm disciplined about. So if you just take that, we're like, okay, well, what does your walk have to do with something that's social connection or bigger than yourself, right?
It's preparing you to do a good job for others later on.
Exactly.
So you're in a place.
Well, here's the thing. I literally don't want to do it at 4 a.m. Right? But what I remember is exactly what you're saying. And it's the attachment to it. And what I mean by that is, on the days I have missed my morning walk, I notice a big difference later in the day. I notice that I'm not as sharp. I notice that when my friends call me, my advice isn't as on point, or I'm not as great of a listener because I'm not able to be as present. I notice that I am less joyful, I feel the day less if I don't do that 1 hour I don't want to do of that morning walk, right? And so the way I'm able to show up and serve or impact or give or be a parent to my 2 little ones or any of that stuff is impacted if I don't have that discipline or that focus of just doing a morning walk for an hour. So I see it in real time, the impact. And so I choose, okay, for me, a walk seems so simple. And with COVID, sometimes I literally walk in circles. Like we were in lockdown in California and weren't allowed to even walk on the streets, right? So I did it in my little small driveway, or some days it's around the kitchen. Yes. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, for me, that seems like a little thing, but for me and what I've noticed is that's actually a big thing, right? And so one question, Brendan, is, because I think this way of thinking, right? I see everyone typing, schedule it, show up, social connection. We can process what that is, but then processing, well, wait a minute, what does that mean in my real life? So everyone who's part of with us now live on Facebook and live on Instagram, thinking through what are those big things that are needle movers? Because we get them in theory or in concept, but sometimes a needle mover can be, for you, can be as simple as the one I just shared, which is like my morning walk, even though I did it at 4 a.m. today, because I know for me, that's a big needle mover with everything else. And with what Brendan's talking about of social connection, because for me, that's how I transcend getting out of myself and not feeling the day and being tired and actually serving and connecting and inspiring. And by the way, I just realized the 3 things you said are part of that morning walk, right? Schedule it, show up, even when you don't want to. And then, that social
realize
connection.
Doing it for yourself is helping you care for others. That's
exactly. Exactly.
That's so good. Morning walk. That's a simple needle mover. It's that old saying. Ethan, my partner at Growth, he always says that little hinges swing big doors. Little things you have to do to swing a big door. And so here's some ideas. First, before I tell you all, do this for yourself right now. Type in the chat down below or comment down below, what are the things if you're disciplined about, your life improves? Like, what areas do you feel like, when I'm on my A game here, or when I do this consistently, when I show up for this, life is better. So maybe you guys can share some of your routines or some of your habits in the comments, because we actually do read these, and it'd be super cool to know, like, what is it for you? What do you what are you great at being disciplined at, and it moves the needle for you? Or also maybe you can share, what do you suck at being disciplined? What do you wish, what's something you feel like, gosh, if I was more disciplined about that, my life would really improve? Because I think we can all learn from where we're great and where we also struggle. Because, struggling, for me, for discipline, I definitely struggle in most areas of my life with discipline, which would surprise people. They're like, what, really? Like for me, I'm incredibly undisciplined at email. Like I wish I was more disciplined about email, getting in there, doing it on a consistent basis, making sure everyone's got their reply. I just suck at email. The good news is I'm good at all the other things that moves the business forward, that matter to me and actually make the business grow. So you don't have to be perfect at everything. You have to pick your spots, know your strengths and the outcomes you want, moving towards it. But I'm seeing a ton of people. Exercise is a big one coming up. Doing your planners, doing your morning routines. I'm seeing that. Diet, exercise, all that. We call them meds in Growth Day. If you haven't heard that from High Performance Academy 2007, like you got to take your meds: meditation, exercise, diet, sleep, and then RX. Good relationships and supplementation. Like when those are on point, bam, everything's good. You become this annoying in life.
No, it's so good. And I know one of your friends, Ariana Huffington, doing so much even to talk about the importance of sleep, right?
Yeah.
I think we're in this society, especially for people living in the US and then some other countries as well, where it's like we're trained to think sleep is for, someone who's lazy. And it's like, oh no, if you're going to, have your best life, your top performance, your most all the things that it's like sleep is so critical. And Ariana Huffington doing amazing things.
You get sleep right, the rest of things line up. So that's a fundamental discipline, like having your, we call it 3-2-1 sleep. 3 hours before bed, no food. 2 hours before bed, stop working. 1 hour before bed, stop the screens. And you know what? Everyone goes, yeah, that doesn't work for me. Or I'm like, no, what it means is you haven't actually tried it for 10 days. Because if you try that for 10 days, you will never, ever go back. Because you will feel so good. You'll be more focused. You'll be more productive. And people, I don't have time for that. I'm like, no, you're losing time because you feel like crap. People don't realize if you feel like crap, you're losing time. You're not as efficient, effective, as creative, as engaged. Like you lose when you feel not good. And I know that's hard because we have plenty of people here who are struggling with health issues, from mental health issue all the way to like physical bad, like they got a bad medical report and they're like, ugh. So I don't say this to pretend it's perfect and easy for everybody. I say it to like, we have to know those areas that will move the needle for us and do our best. Let me share the high performance side of this real fast, because I said there's 3 principles, right? Schedule it, show up, attach social connection. But now here's the things I would do. If you said, Brendan, if you could only be disciplined about 3 things, what would you do? And it's not what you all think. It's totally not what you all think. And this is very much that makes me happy and progress in life. So they're not sexy. The number one thing, if I could give anyone a discipline to always do, on the first of every single month, you do a whole life review. When that calendar hits 1, as in the first of the month, you look at every major area of your life, you score yourself, you ask how you'd like to improve that, and what could you do this month? Because most people never improve their life because they never face their life.
Yeah.
You have to look at it. So every first of the month, that's for those who are new to us. Growth Day began actually began because I said, let's do our personal development on the first of the month. So I go live for 2 hours in Growth Day. So if you're not a member, go to growthday.com, because I do a full personal development seminar on the first of every single month. Because I feel like if we start the month off, we nail that. We start it with good attitude, energy, but also you're looking into the month and asking, is the way I've scheduled this month going to help me move towards the lifestyle I want or the accomplishment of the major 3 projects I'm working on in my life?
And also, if we don't do this, I feel like it is so easy. And how many people can relate to this, where if you don't do this, all of a sudden you blink and you're like, oh, it's halfway through the month, or, oh, 3 months have gone by I don't even know how did this even happen, right?
Yeah.
How many times have we done that? Like, wait a minute, it's Thanksgiving. Like, wait a minute, it's spring break, and it's like your life just flies by
Yeah.
in a blur.
There's so much there, and I want you to keep going. A couple things I want to unpack there. Number one is this unrealistic image for women. It's really interesting. You know, with men, it really isn't that way. If you look at football, Tom Brady has a few ads. He's the good-looking dude, right? He's got a watch ad or whatever. But the guy that got all the ads was Peyton Manning. It was the everyman when it comes to men. With women, these unrealistic images, especially in the beauty industry, for the most part, are the images that we see. And so you really did revolutionize an industry. That's number one. Number two, it's interesting to me that your dream was to be a broadcaster. I got to tell you, we both bagged groceries at Safeways, and I was a broadcasting major in college, and that was my dream. I didn't know it was going to show up 30 years later, you know, after my entrepreneurial journey. But I think life starts after your first dream goes away. I really believe that's where you're defined. And I'm so curious about this journey with the rejection. I have a philosophy. I don't know if you agree with this. I love the title of your book, Believe It, because what you're talking about, turning up this volume on your inner voice and turning down the external rejections. Those rejections you got were over and over again. I was telling my son this, who thinks he wants to be an entrepreneur. He said, Dad, what's one of the things that most people wouldn't tell you? I said, I don't know, that maybe the most important thing is your ability to deal with rejection as an entrepreneur. We talk about vision, we talk about, you know, communication, but can you deal with the rejection? And in your case, it broke my heart, but there was one meeting you had where you thought you had a deal finally, right, with this VC guy. And I want you guys just to feel the depth of the rejection that you may experience as an entrepreneur. And could you do what Jamie did and still push back? So picture years and years of rejection. You're running out of cash. You're working out of your living room. Everyone's telling you no. And then this dude almost says yes, but then really hits you with a hard no. Tell him about that.
Yeah. And I thought literally he was going to be my saving grace, right? Because again, we were down to no money, and we got interest from a private equity company, and they loved our products. Our product worked, like it really worked. So they loved the product, and they wanted to have meetings. So we started going down that path, and you know, they were really big. I mean, they are really big. They've invested in a ton of consumer product companies that you and I buy at the grocery store, and you know, they made a lot of them household names from nothing. And I just thought, oh my gosh, if they invest, A, I'm not going to go bankrupt. B, maybe they'll help get me into all these retail stores that keep telling me no and keep telling me I'm not the right fit and all that. And so, you know, we did meeting after meeting, and we started the diligence phase, which is, you know, where you show all your projections, your product pipeline, everything. And it got down to the last meeting, and my husband, Paulo, and I flew up for it. And I thought, like, this is it. Like, this is going to be it. And I'll never forget, the head guy was standing about 3 feet from me. And he thanked me. He said, you know, that we should be proud of the product we created. And then he says to me, and he's about 3 feet from me, face to face. And he says, so I want to let you know it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in IT Cosmetics. And I said, okay, like I'm used to hearing no at this point, right? And I'm like, all right, well, you know, can you tell me why? Because usually feedback is a gift, usually. And I'm like, can you tell me why? And he's like, do you want me to be really honest? And I said, yeah. And I'll never forget, like, I remember just like him looking at me for a minute, and I remember feeling my heart racing really fast. And then I remember seeing his lips move in slow motion. And he basically said, he did say straight to my face, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you, with your body and your weight.
Wow.
And I remember it was this moment where for me, it was almost like this lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt kind of like flooded my body, and almost felt like I was staring my own fear straight in the eye, listening to him. And I knew I had to keep my faith bigger than it. But Ed, in that moment, like, it's wild. I actually, it hurt. Like, I literally went in my car in the parking lot and cried my eyes out. Those things hurt. But what stands out to me in that moment, and I actually never felt, I didn't get mad at him. I still am not mad at him. Because guess what? The whole reason, that whole why beneath the why on why I was doing this company, like, he literally passed on investing in my company because he had the exact same mindset, right? That everyone else does about what you have to look like, the box you have to fit into to be successful. And he's just as much I don't want to say victim, byproduct maybe of the whole beauty industry too. He's passing on an investment in my company because of my weight. And I remember this moment, but the thing that sticks out to me most is in this moment, I had this feeling, this deep feeling, like as he's telling me this, that he's wrong. And I had that feeling, but I knew nothing yet that I had done prove that, because I had no sales yet really. And I also knew like proving it would first and foremost hinge on me believing it for myself. And, you know, fast forward. And by the way, in the years after that, like it's discipline of recognizing when someone else's voice is playing in your head all of a sudden. And I listened to a show you did actually where you scratch it and right. And that's what I have to do over and over. Like I'd have to literally get really good at turning down the volume on those things because, and I want to tell you a full circle moment that happened. It was so good. But like, I feel like that, what you just shared about telling your son this advice, right? I feel like that's everything because I feel like so many people, what ends up happening is everyone else's rejections, right, end up like equating to self-doubt in our own head, our own self-doubt about ourselves. We start to turn the volume up on that to the point where with all of it, with everyone else's opinions, and in my case, the lack of success around me, it can get so loud that we can't even hear our own internal knowing anymore. And I feel like so many people, and then you have your friends and your family, like they mean the best, but they're seeing you through their own lens of fear and inexperience, right? And so between all of it, so many people I feel like end up literally talking themselves out of their own calling and talking themselves out of their own truth and staying in their comfort zone at like the cost of it chipping away at their soul. We've all done this. And literally missing out on the person they're born to be. And I feel like and my story is like years and years and years of rejection. But when I look back at the things I did wrong and the things I did right, usually like my biggest mistakes came down to when I actually didn't listen to something I knew in my gut. And I decided to go with something an expert had told me when it didn't feel like quite right. And the biggest successes are when I really listened to that knowing, even when it went against what other people told me. So like this guy telling me this, had I changed who I was, right, and tried to fit some mold that he said would sell, if that was who I was authentically, then great. But it's not for me, right? And so had I ever conformed to him or any of those retailers that told me change this, change that, and maybe we'll bring you into our store, or L'Oreal that for 3 years of meetings said no and all the things I needed to do differently. Had I listened to most of any of that, especially the parts that didn't align with my gut instinct, I would have never sold my company for over $1 billion. I probably would be out of business. So that's
you hear yourself when you say this, Jamie, where you're like, I would have never sold my company for $1 billion. Still, when that comes out of your mouth, is there a part of you like, I sold my company for over $1 billion? Does it still hit you a little bit?
On one hand, I still can't process it. On the other hand, you'll understand this when I say this, and you won't judge me for saying this. And I believe actually everyone in your community, I believe they're part of your community because they'll understand this too. Selling your company for $1 billion is exciting, but like for me, I don't feel like I'm put on this earth to compete with anyone else. I feel like I'm put on this earth to compete with who God made me capable of becoming.
Amen.
And I feel like I'm just getting started. Like I'm not there yet. So selling a company for $1 billion is exciting, but like, I feel like stepping into all of who I am and serving and giving and all the things I'm really called to do, I still feel like I'm not there yet. By the way, you talked about—
I feel like having watched you speak a couple times and then listening now, I feel like all of that happened, all of the struggle, all of the ups and downs, all of the selling of the company, all you've learned, all you've been able to articulate, your broadcast background, all of that stuff is leading you right now to your time. Like, I think you are called for what you're doing now, which is teaching and inspiring people and giving them hope. However, you did say it came full circle. Yeah. What did you mean when you said that? What's the full circle?
Ed. Okay, you love this. Okay, so this is so good because I actually never got mad at him, right? Because for me, it was like something bigger than him. Yeah. So fast forward a few years, and when we actually ended up selling to L'Oreal, it was their largest U.S. acquisition in their history, and so it made the homepage of Wall Street Journal, a bunch of stuff like that. And the day that the deal was announced, I got an email from him, and he said, congratulations, I was wrong, so proud of you. That whole thing he did, and also I learned that it would. So two things. I learned it would have been the most successful investment in his firm's history. But here's the thing, and this is where our setbacks, I feel like, oh my gosh, our setbacks, even when they suck, like it sucked to hear him say those words to me. It hurt. I cried, like it hurts, right? Rejection in almost any form basically says to us, you're not enough. You don't belong. You're not worth, I don't think I will make money off you, or I don't believe in you, or it comes in all those forms, and it sucks. But I really believe, even almost all the time, when I look back at almost all the rejections, I feel like that, like, again, those setbacks really are our setups. And sometimes rejection is really like serendipitous grace, wrapped in this package labeled painful rejection. And what I mean by that is, I was so desperate at the time. I think you just posted, I just saw your thing where you're like, scarcity is value. Yeah. So yeah, I had no scarcity back then. I would have given him like any part of my company. We were down to under $1,000 in our bank account. I didn't know how we were going to survive. Had he wanted to invest, had he said yes to us that day, I would probably give him the majority of the company for probably almost no money, just hoping to survive. But because he didn't believe in me, and because we got so much rejection along the way, when we ended up selling to L'Oreal 8 years into the business, I was still the largest shareholder.
That's awesome.
And so, right?
I love this. Serendipitous grace. I may steal that from you. That is beautiful. And you guys have to say something. It's why you want to get this book. It's loaded with information like this. It's loaded with stories like this about believing it. Why do you need to believe it? Let's just unpack this rejection thing, and then we're going to get to a magic moment. The reason that I think your ability to deal with rejection is so important, it's not talked about enough. Let's just be honest. You know why 99.9% of dreams die, everybody? You eventually get too much rejection. So if that's the thing that's going to cause you not to get your dream, 99.9% of the time, it's just there becomes a threshold that people don't take the rejection long enough. So they don't stick around to receive the grace. And so if that is true, if we already know that going in, then why not pre-negotiate in the very beginning what price you're willing to pay? Hopefully it's anything, as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral, so that the 99.9% of the reasons why your dream won't happen, you've already set in your favor if you've just decided you'll take the rejection. That's why it's such a big part. How do you take the rejection? You got to believe it. And that's why this book is so powerful. So we lead to this point, guys. And again, the beautiful thing about Jamie's story is it's her vulnerabilities and her authenticity that made the brand relevant, all the way up to the extreme magic moment. Don't hide your insecurities. Don't hide your blemishes, guys, figuratively and literally in your entrepreneurial journey. Get people wanting to root for you. Your fears and insecurities are what connect you with the marketplace. Ironically, you don't have to hide them. You can work on them, but there's nothing wrong with saying I have them. So finally, somehow, you get this moment on QVC, right? And you are so brilliant in this moment. You ask them, I'll let you tell the story, but to me, it's like, if you don't do this thing, again, maybe it still doesn't hit all the way to the last second, the last moment. It was your vulnerability that connected you with the audience.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock this house and welcome to the stage, Jamie Kern Lima! Baby Kern Lima!
Every single one of us has had someone tell us we're not enough. Every single one of us has had someone say words to us that hurt.